And we're live, and good morning, everybody. This meeting of the Senate Ag Committee, and it's Tuesday, February 2nd. We have two watershed groups with us this morning. We have the Connecticut River Watershed Group, as well as the Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition. And last week we had the Franklin County folks on that head up their watershed area, and Heather Darby and that crew. And so we'd like to hear a bit about how things are going in your respective areas, and how you think, if there's things that we should be doing, or any way that we can help the process to be better. I know all eyes are on us in the ag community, and I think you folks are. Personally, I think you're all doing very well and working hard and achieving some good goals, but it'd be good if we could hear from you. I think there's four of us committee members. I'm Bobby Starr and chair of the committee, and Chris.
Chris Pearson from Chittenden County. Nice to see you all.
Ryan Collmore from Rutland County. What Chris said.
And Corey Parent from Franklin County and Alberg.
Yeah, and you folks could introduce yourselves, as I guess we could do it right now, and then we'll just get into the discussion. I don't know if any of you want to go first, and from the two areas. I have Brian Kemp at the head of my list. So you want to start, Brian?
I'm Brian Kemp, president of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition, and I manage Mountain Meadows Organic Beef Farm.
Marie
Audette from Blue Spruce Farm in Bridport. I'm a founding member of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition and currently vice president.
Yeah, and Eric?
Yes, Eric Clifford, Starksboro. That's Addison County, just barely, almost Chittenden. And glad to be here.
And John?
Hello, everybody. I'm John Roberts. I'm the executive director of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition. Formerly a farmer, formerly also one of the founding members of the coalition years ago, and glad to be here.
Yeah, and from the Connecticut River group, Walt.
Good morning. I'm Walt Gladstone down here in Bradford, Vermont. I'm a part of the Connecticut River Watershed Alliance. Thank you for this opportunity this morning.
Yeah, and Beth.
Good morning. I'm Beth Kennett. We have Liberty Hill Farm in Rochester. We're on the White River, which flows into the Connecticut and is just over the hill from the Champlain Valley in Windsor County. So we're in this unique little area that we touch on. Addison County, Rutland County is, Senator Collmore, Rutland County is literally a quarter of a mile up the road from me. And our son who farms with us is a half a mile from Addison County. So even though we're in Windsor, so we really touch a lot of points with all of you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Appreciate it.
Well, welcome all, and we'll get started. I don't know if one group wants to start first for time reasons or not. Are there any time constraints with any of you?
No.
If not, I guess, Walt, would you want to start
Sure.
off your group?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks again for this opportunity, Senator Starr and your committee. You made me chuckle a little bit when you started out by saying all eyes are upon us. It reminds me back 32 years ago when we were bought our farm at auction, and that summer we were cleaning up before we started milking cows that fall, and a local veterinarian stopped by for about 10 minutes. God bless him. He's passed since, and he asked a few questions, and before he turned, he goes, "Well, Walt, all eyes in the valley are upon you. We wish you the best." So
Yeah.
here we are 32 years later. So I guess I just wanted to highlight, to start out with some of the watershed accomplishments and our commitment to clean water. As I list these, many of these practices are practices that we have implemented, farmers up and down the valley, before having input from the state or financial assistance. Some of those are buffer strips, cover crops, no-till planting, drag lining manure, and incorporating that or injecting it definitely helps the environment, fertility, and helps with our goal for clean water. We all know, and it also made me chuckle a little, Bobby, not too many weeks ago, you asked what we thought about milk pricing. And I think it's almost 2 to 3 weeks ago, I had stated I thought the first quarter looked pretty good from all the people and what they'd said. And since then, milk prices for class 3 in the short run have dropped about $3 to $4. So it'd be like a weatherman predicting it's not going to rain and your hay all got rained on. So I really missed that one. And I bring that up because oftentimes these practices that I just mentioned, farmers, want to be good stewards of the land and implement all these practices, but oftentimes financial reasons, it's just hard to implement all the different things we want to do. So I guess I bring that up because I'm hoping as we move forward, some of the low-lying fruit cover crops in particular, in many practices these days, we've been encouraged to do that and had some financial support. But now, like, for example, even this last year at our farm, we probably did 400 to 500 acres of cover crops and had no financial support in that. And at that time of year, being as busy as we are, not only do we have the cost of the cover crop, we've also hired an inspector to come in and drill that crop into the ground for us. So financial support as we move ahead. We've been blessed to have participation in getting a grant for a no-till planter this last year. We had the drought and we actually no-tilled some of our grass stands in with sorghum, which helped us provide additional feed for our cows. So how can you guys help? I think one of the major overlying issues is and it probably plays off your milk pricing meeting the other day. Go slow, be thoughtful, be mindful, try to understand the issues and regulate where you think it needs to be regulated. And, really make sure that implementation of the policies that you want to put in place, it's based on science. And a lot of this stuff, as we probably all know, a lot of it has to do with modeling. When we talk about the P index and Russell, and most recently I can speak to, the standard 590, which is our nutrient management standard, has been asked to be looked at again at the national level. And so they're making some changes, but as I understand it, and I would encourage your committee to look into it, our state, as I understand it, has taken some additional measures to even make it a bigger impact in what they want to see in that P index. And for example, our local TSP, the technical service provider for an LFO permit most recently. And our farm is about the same size. He had a farm that had about a 25 million gallon manure capacity to be permitted and was permitted to put on the land. And under this new look at the P, they may lose the opportunity to put about 8 million gallons of manure on that land. And so that simple math would be a third. And so I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but I think it really needs to make sure that this stuff is based on science and it's just not, trying to be overly cautious where it shouldn't. Just real briefly to the milk price of it the other day, as you guys heard, I really encourage you guys to take what steps you can to try to look at helping push the federal price. As Bob Gray said the other day, be careful who you put on that. But, the class one mover and how that PPD has impacted us negatively, it really needs to be taken a hard look. And lastly, how can you help? You can help us by looking at the cost side of our expense side on our farms and things like current use. What a great program. And we wouldn't want to lose sight of having that. I don't know if there's things with Efficiency Vermont, I guess it depends on which side of the equation you're at, but we're getting charged over 14 cents a kilowatt hour compared to some of our neighbors that might be as low as half of that. And so thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. And I look forward to hearing what the other watersheds have to say. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, and before we leave you, Walt, when the Ag Agency sets up these nutrient management programs, do you know if they have ag farmers sitting on a board that helps analyze what soils will handle and or is that handed down?
I honestly can't answer that, but Senator Starr, I think that oftentimes the technical service providers are involved with that to some degree. But most recently, as of this morning, I spoke to our guy, and I think some of that stuff is moving without enough knowledge from the technical service providers and the farm. And on our farm, we rely heavily on that person and that professional side of it to guide us with making sure that what's coming downstream is being looked at. And my understanding is that's an area that could have some improvement. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah. So Beth, would you like to go next?
I think Walt gave you quite a long list. I guess I was just going to say that I feel that we've really been very blessed to work collaboratively amongst the watersheds. And I think that it really goes to the fact that the farmers are really invested heavily in working on our environmental issues, working together. I know with our Connecticut River watershed, we did get grants, as Walt said, to get some no-till drills, seeders, get some equipment that we can share amongst the small farmers that are in our watershed. The farmers in our watershed, a lot of them can't afford to go and buy that equipment themselves. And so we have one of our board members, Steve Stocking, who has just gone miles and miles and miles over many acres to go around to small farms and bring this equipment that we can share together. And I think that's really, pretty unique opportunity there. And the fact that we all are working really diligently and really proactively to keep improving what we're doing and improving our stewardship and we're working with the University of Vermont. I know you've heard from Heather Darby and all of
Yep.
her research. And we're actually using our own dairy promotion dollars to help invest in research there at UVM. Dairy Management Inc. has got a great research project going up at UVM, and we're invested. And we're invested in making our farms the best that they possibly can be. So we want to work with you. We don't want it to be an adversarial relationship between farmers and the state in any way whatsoever. This is something that we can unite together and work together. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think that our watershed group is really, really invested in how we can provide resources for our farmers across commodities and across all sizes and methodology. And I think, again, that's another strength that we have that we can bring to you, is it's not about, it's like Walt and I are both working together. It's not about what size or what methods. It's not about what commodity that we're in. It's all of us who work the land, really appreciating that and working the land together. So thank you, Senator Starr, and the whole committee.
Yeah, and last week, I know some of the committee could pick up. We had Heather and the crew in from up above, up in Franklin County, and they had Heather had a very interesting presentation in regards to, no-till planting on corn ground over and over and over, and sod ground. It was a very interesting presentation, and the tons per acre as a result. And I don't know if she shared that with all of you folks yet, but I thought that's the way we and you folks can present all these different practices and what's good for the soil and not good for the soil. And it was really very interesting.
I think the latest research study out of Cornell on soil health is just phenomenal. And I think that's my point, is we are really working hard, moving in the right directions, and we've really made, phenomenal improvements and changes, and we are just working so hard to keep moving forward with this, and the research is backing that up. So it's great.
Yeah. Any other questions for Beth right now? Or if not, we'll move on to.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I guess I'd love to ask a question, and I'd ask it to any of you to just address when you get there. Help us, the nudges that the state gives, and even the regulatory, the RAPs and BMPs, and every time these are rolled out, it's a burden, and farmers react, and nobody's saying, hey, make it harder for us, cost us more money, and it's tricky. But I think by and large, we have been trying to ground it in science and in the research, and here you are all saying this is going kind of well with, you need assistance. I understand that, but help us understand it. Do you have any advice for us as we are, this is going to be an ongoing process. And I think I've certainly heard folks say, can you take it easy on us this year? It's been a hell of a year. I think we all feel that in some ways. But do you have any advice to us as my intuition is to try to incentivize behavior change as opposed to mandating it. But what, if anything, would you suggest to us to soften the blow and bring people along, as opposed to sort of making it a conflictual dynamic? And this is a hard question to answer, but I'd just be curious of any impression that y'all have.
John?
Well, I'd love to have a crack at that, Mr. Chair and Senator Pearson. Of course, incentives always work. particularly financial ones. So, we are, I think all of us, all farmers are very interested in where this payment for ecosystem services is going to go. And there is a ways to go yet on figuring out a system that is fair, equitable, is measurable. It's like so much of what we do on the farm. So I do think when that is, it's been kind of on hold since last spring because of the COVID pandemic, but I gather it's about to be revived again, and hopefully something concrete will come out of that. I'm very interested in what other countries are doing, particularly Europe, on payment for ecosystem services. There is a general shift in a lot of places to that instead of a subsidy-based system. There's no doubt that under the new administration in Washington that they have talked about this. So, I think that'll be something we can work on together.
Any other comments to Senator Pearson's question? Yeah, Walt?
Well, I couldn't hear the full question because my audio keeps cutting in and out, but I think I got the basic understanding. I guess the thing that what I would recommend as well is to encourage the relationship between the ag department and the TSPs, and then it moves out to all the farms. The meeting the other night that was had between the three watersheds was just incredibly informative, and it was a wonderful meeting. Sometimes I feel, to the senator's question, I think if we can continue to try to collaborate and work together as this nudge moves ahead, that's going to be the key for all of us to come together and feel like we're working more together. I think the collaboration part is really, really important. And sometimes I feel like there's been a little bit of a pushback between the TSPs and the ag department. And that's, I don't know if that's in the other watershed, so I don't want to be misleading, but with our planner, I feel like that's an area for improvement.
And Walt, I know you aren't short on words. Have you brought that up with the secretary? Because that's who you need to talk to, is the boss, and not, the lower help, because some of them like to push their authority sometimes, and they forget that they're working for people like you folks, and so I didn't know, have you ever brought that up to Anson?
I've brought it up to the deputy secretary before. We've had a great relationship with both of those people, and they've done a great job. There has been, and you know how it goes, I think that there was a time when the ag department felt like they had reached out and it didn't all come together. And all I'm saying is it's a new day. Let's keep moving forward. They might have thought at one point in time they had put out the olive leaf, and I think we got to keep working at it. Thank you for bringing that up. I will reach out again, but I would encourage you to do that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're all pretty shy on this committee, so I don't know if we'd bring that up or not. Thanks, and so we'll go to Brian.
I'd like to thank you all for the invite. It's always great for us to meet with you and go over things. and you've heard from me numerous times. I'm gonna turn this over to our executive director, John Roberts. Let him share some things with you, and certainly, we'll answer questions along the way that come up. But I'd like I think that he probably knows John. He's been around, like he said, a former dairy farmer here in Addison County. He worked for the Agency of Ag as an inspector on small farms. And we're excited to have John on board. We were able to hire him this past year through some Clean Water Fund grant money that we received through the Agency of Ag. And we also have hired on a communications director, Sarah Audette, who happens to be Marie Audette's daughter-in-law. And she's going to be in charge of handling outreach and communications. And she's already revamped our website and all. So we've got two great employees that we're proud of and we're glad to have on board. So with that, I'll let John speak for a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brian.
You may regret this, Mr. Chair, but anyway. So just the introduction, I'm being an executive director now. I get to write, spend a lot of time writing. So the coalition is a farmer advocacy group based in Middlebury. Though I've yet to make it there, I've been in my basement in Cornwall since I took this job. We have a membership of around 100 farmers and 40 agriculturally related businesses. Our farmers are both conventional and organic, from some of the largest in the state down to a beekeeper. Over 80,000 acres of farmland is part of our coalition in the counties of Addison, Rutland, and Chittenden. Our mission focus is economic resiliency, water quality, and environmental leadership. Our farmers are some of the leaders, along with our partners in the Farmers Watershed Alliance and the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance, in making management and structural changes to our operations that are showing progress in the reduction of phosphorus heading into Lake Champlain. This has been documented and reported in the latest report by ANRDEC, the Vermont Clean Water Initiative 2020 Performance Report, which shows the amount of progress that has been made. There is a long way to go, no question, but the right direction has been established and farmers are both on board to continue and increase this work. One of the things we in the coalition pride ourselves on is cooperating with our partners, clearly exhibited by the successful joint annual virtual meeting that Walt mentioned, that the three major watershed groups held last week. We have very similar goals and benefit from working together. In addition, I'm very keen to work with other groups like Farm Bureau, Rural Vermont, NOFA, New England Dairy, our milk cooperatives, and other smaller groups like ACORN or the Center for an Agricultural Economy, and so on and so forth. We all have far more in common with promoting Vermont agriculture and high quality nutritious food in an environmentally sound way than divide us. We are hoping to put 2020 behind us, learn from some of the positives that the pandemic has illustrated when it comes to Vermont agriculture, and move to the new normal, which I hope is not a plateau, but shows farmers' ability to adapt and move forward. There are big issues, not least of which is the continued importance of the environment, particularly linked with climate change. Nationally, the dairy industry has taken a lead with the goal through the Dairy Initiative Center to be net zero carbon by 2050 or sooner. Locally in Addison County, we have been reaching out to a local group, the Climate Economy Action Center, who have produced an initial study on greenhouse gas emissions in Addison County to make sure that the best available science is being followed. Farmers have the ability through how they manage their livestock, and more importantly, their soil, not only to reduce nutrient runoff, but significantly sequester carbon in healthier soil. This improvement in soil health is not limited to one type of farming, but can encompass the broad swath of farming and management styles. There is much yet to be learned about soil health and what it really means. We are actively participating in that science and cooperation. An important point that I know you'll appreciate is the need for continued and extensive farmer education. This is clearly demonstrated by the need to continue and expand support for the University of Vermont Agricultural College, the very important extension service from which we all benefit, and the Vermont Technical College. There is a lot of exciting innovation and research being done that needs to make it onto farms and into fields. Our coalition hopes to get back to in-field events this summer to continue to aid our farmers to reach and exceed both their environmental responsibility and ensure their economic future. We look forward to continuing to be a resource in the work that is done in the legislature and importantly, this committee, Mr. Chair. And if you have any questions, of course, I or Marie, Brian, or Eric be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, John. Are there questions from any of the committee members right now? If not, John, you talked about working with NOFA and rural Vermont and, you know, all the ag groups. What about, yeah, if we get pushback, it's usually from some environmental group. And I'm wondering if we work enough with them to deliver the message that what you folks are all doing and how well you're proceeding in creating a good environment and how hard you're working. I wonder, is there some way that we can get this message to those folks so that, you know, they aren't riding your backs and pointing fingers at our ag community? Have you thought about that?
Oh, most definitely, Mr. Chair. And we are involved. I'm sure I've heard in the past about what was called the Dairy and Water Collaborative, headed up by Gil Livingston and Roger Albee and David Mears and others. And that kind of, it did meet a roadblock. It morphed in time, and it met a roadblock when there was this sort of, the environmental groups and the farmer groups were sort of could not bridge that gap. However, you know, I'm an optimist, possibly naive optimist. I do, and I am still working with Gil and others, and we're actually in a process right now to kind of figure out exactly where farmers are on this. So we've just started conducting a group of interviews with different farmers around the state. And, you know, we'll have to see where it goes. I think there is sometimes the farming communities, and I'm speaking generally, sometimes feel that there is sort of a purist mentality without recognizing the progress that is being made. And, you know, when we started working on cleaning up the lake, and, you know, that was about the time I started working for the agency in 2013, and the RAPs were being redeveloped, and we, you know, we're trying to figure out what needed to be done. And, you know, that's in time frame, 2014 is not that long ago. You know, 2016, the Clean Water Act was passed, and, you know, a significant amount of progress has been made in 4 or 5 years. We are going to have issues that we are going to have differences about. There's no doubt about that. the same as we do have, as I have said to my compatriots in rural Vermont or NOFA, we are going to have things that we disagree on occasionally. Hopefully it's occasionally. But I would always be upfront with them and say, we cannot support you on that, and this is why. Or they hopefully could say the same to us, and hopefully we'd be able to see the benefits of far outweigh our differences. It's evolving all the time. So I'm always hopeful, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, John. Brian?
And I just to add quickly to that, Marie and I both were part of that Dairy Water Collaborative right along through the way, and have talked with Gil. And John hit it on the head. We came to kind of a little bit of an impasse, even though, Gil and have worked tirelessly to try to facilitate this. I think one of the challenging things with some of the groups too is there's always a revolving personnel. I mean, in these groups, and they don't always, so there's a lot of education that needs to happen continuously. Not all the players are always there long term. And that's been a challenge, I know, just through the last couple of years, seeing people in the higher positions, some of these organizations change. So it's, as John said, it's always evolving. We're trying to work towards it. Definitely, I've had discussions on, let's agree on what we can agree on. As John said, there's always going to be challenges. You're not going to agree with every group on everything. But let's find some mutual things that we can agree on and build off that. And in defense of, the environmental groups, I think there is truly some players there that want to do the same, but it is challenging. They're large groups. They're in some cases, and there's a lot of different perspectives within each group, even in our own groups. So,
Yeah. Yes, Beth?
I would just make one comment is that one of the advantages of our having these watershed groups is because we can aggregate our information, we can work with the researchers and provide scientific data to support what we're doing, why and how we're doing it, and the results of that. And so I think that, having people able to work with our watershed groups and get that scientific data really is a huge help to go forward.
Yeah, I don't believe we as a committee have seen that report out of Cornell University, but we'll have Linda send and
you
get
need
that
to get it because it's really, really tremendous. It was presented at our Mutual Watershed Alliance group last week, and it was just terrific. You really.
Yeah. Marie, did you have comments to add other than what John had to say? And Brian?
I spent a lot of time putting my thoughts on paper, and I hope that you did have a chance to read, the commentary that I wrote. And possibly I'll give it to Linda to send it around, and that, because I condensed what was 6 pages into 2 pages so people will actually read it. But I really agree with Beth's comments. What we're really stressing is results, and we're really investing in the science so that we can continually improve and build, something that's real, not just emotional, but results that are going to matter for our next generations, because we're all on this, all of us have future generations. I see my son working as hard as we used to when we were younger, and they want to be optimistic, but they want to live in a community that wants them to be here. And that's what I want for Vermont. I want us in agriculture to feel valued. And I'm telling you, that simple thing is to, when you know that you matter and you're valued, you'll jump through hoops to do what's right for your community. I'm not going to take a lot more time because I'm here a lot too. And if Eric wants to jump in.
Yeah, yeah, we'll move on to Eric. Thanks, Murray. And Linda, you sent that to Linda, did you? So she can send it to us.
We're working on it.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, Eric. Welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you. Just a couple of points. The farmers working together, farmers helping farmers, and in our case in the Addison County, the coalition members helping the coalition members. It's just awesome stuff. And it is all about education and how we figure out how to do things better. And I really believe that these watershed groups it's just the way to go. And it's really encouraging to me. The other thing I just wanted to talk a little bit about was that I'll use an example of their no-till, and it is relatively new. I've been doing it for 10 years. I made a commitment back there that I really felt that the no-till was the way to go. But I have to tell you, it's not easy. And with all the help and with all the science and everything, it's still one of the most nerve-wracking things that you could do on a dairy farm. I've planted into dry conditions, wet conditions. I can say that I've planted into cover crops that really didn't amount to very much. But I also may have, maybe perhaps at least in our area, set a record. I've planted no-till into 42-inch high, 42-inch tall winter rye. I didn't even know if I was in the right field when I was planting. So the exciting thing was, last night I just found out that I had got approved for the SEEP grant, and I am going to have a guidance system for my tractor. So Senator Starr, I hope you're excited for me, because now I won't have to go out into some of those fields and wonder where, the hell am I? So anyway, we're pretty excited down here. Anyway, I don't want to keep going here because I really like listening more than I do talking, for sure. But I really appreciate the fact that you invited us here. I am just so encouraged by our Addison County Farmer Coalition and the other watershed groups. It's just a really fun time, along with the stress, and it doesn't necessarily have to be planting no-till to be stressful. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah. So questions from committee members? Brian Collimoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So listening this morning, I'm reminded about the 11 most terrifying words in the English language, which goes something like, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I hope that you don't view this committee in that regard. I've been on it for 3 terms now, and I think generally speaking, we all respect and admire what you folks do. I'm going to make an analogy, and I don't know how well this holds up, but to me, you are kind of like the race car driver. You take care of your vehicle, you change the oil, and you make sure you have good tires on it and the motor's running, because otherwise it doesn't work well and you never would win a race. So I don't care if you're conventional or organic. I don't care if it's dairy or crop farmers or maple or forestry or anything else. I think this committee does appreciate your work and thank you for what you do. And it's been a pleasure to have you here. And Beth, I don't care if it's the White River or the Connecticut River or Lake Champlain. It's all the same. It really is. Our farming community really does a great job.
Yeah, Brian Kemp. You're on mute, Brian.
There. I would like to thank you for that statement, Senator Cullimore. And I myself, and I think on behalf of the coalition, would just like to say that I think we have always felt very, very supported by this committee, and along with the House Committee on Ag. I feel like you guys always are listening. You hear what we say. It doesn't fall on deaf ears. And you guys have a challenging job, and you're getting pressure from a lot of different directions, and we understand that. But I truly believe it's always an honor for us to be able to speak with you folks one-on-one like this, and just, you know, by all means, we know you work for us. We know you understand our situations, but anytime that you do have questions, you know, feel free to reach out to any of us, and more than happy. And even, I have to admit, the Zoom works better than driving to Montpelier.
Yeah, it does.
We can have a 2-hour meeting here instead of a 2-hour meeting in a 2-hour commute. So I think this works great. And you know, as the session goes on, I think anytime you have questions, really encouraged to have Linda reach out to us like you have in the past. Senator Pearson, I just wanted to touch on your question a little bit about, you know, going this the question about the grounded on science. You know, we're working closely, as John said, with the PES, the payment for ecosystem services, and that is going to start back up. But I was just on a Zoom meeting yesterday with John Winston, and John, I think, is either going to meet with you folks or something like that. But John was working off a grant, looking at how to not get into all the details of setting up a PES, but what it would look like. And I have to tell you, he's done a great job, and I hope if he hasn't shared that with you, he's going to. But there's a lot of work going into it. It is a long road to figure it all out. But to incentivize the farmers, I think, is key. And NRCS has been a great tool for all of us. But as we all know, NRCS and the Ag Agency, a lot of those dollars in the past have been to fix problems. And if we can proactively, you know, be fixing these problems with incentives, financial incentives, you know, and not to get into the details of John's thing, but, you know, and everybody all in, meaning community, meaning philanthropy, meaning state and federal dollars, have those dollars there and available for farmers to reach into and get to help do these projects, which I think will mitigate a lot of the resource concerns that have been out there in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, it like for us, you know, this working on Zoom, we've talked a lot about it, even if we get back to Montpelier and serve as a group there, it would be great to hold meetings like this, even on Zoom within the committee room, because it saves you folks hours of time, and you know, and you can deliver the same. It seems like the messages that we've been receiving, you know, are good and just as good as if we were, well, we wouldn't even all be fitting in our little committee room. So we'd either find a bigger room or let you in 2 or 3 at a time. But it has worked really quite well. And so I hope if things ever, you know, which they will, get back to normal, we will still have a system either like this or very similar where we can do hearings and you know, we can all sit here on the same page and you see facial expressions and we can kind of watch if you give us a finger or something. But no, it's worked. So far, it's worked very well, with the exception of our very first meeting. Someone gave out our number, and somebody that found the number got on, and that was pretty rough language that they were using. But now, as you noticed when you got the invitation, it says to maintain this number for your own sole use. But that, I don't think, we haven't had an incident, in the almost now full year that we've been doing this. Beth just sent a note, and you guys don't have to look for parking in Montpelier when you get there and spend a bunch of time doing that. It's going well. I don't know, are there other questions from committee members? If not, the big issue or I don't know if it's a big issue, but it's a very important issue that we have within our own group in the legislature, in the Senate, is a lot of our issues are cross jurisdictions, and so if a bill dealing with water quality and all that leaves our room, it usually gets looked at over in natural resources, and it they hear from very different folks than from you folks, and it's kind of too bad that we couldn't do more joint hearings so they would hear the same thing we hear and understand in that room how hard you folks are all working in a very positive direction to correct any of the infractions that some people think that are happening. So maybe that, I think having Senator Pearson on our committee, who used to be on natural resources, has helped considerably. And, that communications is very important. So Perrin, are you on that committee now?
Natural resources?
Yeah.
I was last term. No, I'm on institutions in the afternoon.
No, you didn't make it back in there. But that to keep that communications open is very important to our success and your success, and I think the whole state of Vermont's success. John?
Well, on that note, Mr. Chair, of course, the chair of the Natural Resources is one of our home senators, Chris Bray. At any time, you could let Senator Bray know that we would be only too delighted to talk to him and his committee at any time. We have I think individually we have a good relationship with Senator Bray, but it always helps to have a little incentive from another chair to reach out to us, especially now when clearly climate has risen to the top of the agenda, if not very near to the top, and is being pushed significantly by the new administration. And we have this sort of unique situation where farmers are often blamed for their environmental impact, although I don't understand how you can grow food without some environmental impact. But they're also being looked at as a significant solution, or in their ability through their grazing livestock, through their soil activities, cover cropping, building soil health, to sequestering carbon. So I mean, it's just another emphasis of how everything is integrated together. And just one other little fact about these Zoom calls is I'm sure all of you in the legislature are seeing how important universal broadband is going to be to this state.
Yes.
And it's important to communicate. It's important for businesses to be able to get to their customers. Just a little plug.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Marie and Beth, both of you had your hands up. I don't know which one first, but.
Well, I was actually, John kind of brought up when you mentioned natural resources, and of course, Senator Bray is our senator, and he just wrote an amazing piece on climate change, as did I. But you know, even though he's from our county and we have such an amazing group, you know, through our coalition and through active work on climate, he neglected to include agriculture as part of the climate solution. So we really do need to communicate more with natural resources, and anything you guys can do to help us get there, we would appreciate.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that it's always been important that we all work together. Just some people kind of forget that. Beth?
Yes, thank you, Senator. So I'm going to say something kind of positive that has happened on our side of the state, in that our Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance group has worked with environmental groups with the Great River Hydro. And I presume that you all are very aware that we're in the midst of relicensing the hydro dams along the Connecticut River, and that relicensing will be in effect for the next 50 years. And because we have this Farmers Alliance watershed group, we have been able to have a voice at the table with these relicensing permits. And we have been able to get Great River Hydro to amend their manner of operating the dams, so that we're looking at their doing it as a run of river rather than how they have been operating them for the last few years. If you're not familiar with that, they were operating the dams, generating power dependent upon the spot market. So essentially, you know, when the price went up on Wall Street, they let the water go. And letting that water go, Walt can probably attest on his fields, can make a difference of 4 feet in a matter of hours. That has a huge impact on the erosion, the stability of the banks. And if a farmer has hay down, then it's underwater and stays that way. So it's a tremendous impact for the farms along the Connecticut River. And by the way, there's farms along the Connecticut River. I mean, so for us to be able to have a voice at the table with Great River Hydro in these federal environmental regulatory meetings is just amazing. And to get them to say, okay, we will look at doing, normal run of river rather than operating the dams on the spot market is just incredible. But it's an example of how we as farmers have been able to work collaboratively with the environmental groups in a really, really significant way that will have impact for decades to come.
Well, that's really good news to hear that they're willing to work with you, and it's working quite well, I take.
Right. And also there may be a mitigation fund set up as well. I don't know, again, I presume that you all know that the dams on the Connecticut provide a significant amount of power for Boston. So, you know, the fact that our little farmer group on the Connecticut River has a voice in that, to me is really amazing. So there's really a lot of positive stuff going on.
Yeah. Chris, Chris?
Senator Polina and I, among others, many years ago, pushed for Vermont to buy those dams, and that was a real mistake. I wish we had prevailed. But I just want to say, you know, we're evolving too, right? The legislature really, in this way, is reflective of the community. There was a time when Senate Natural Resources and House Natural Resources and Energy were the climate committees, and that was it. If you wanted to deal with global warming, any of those things, you went to those committees. It is now clearly evolving so that we understand this touches every facet of our economy, and certainly ag and forests, and a whole host of other issues. And so in that way, you know, I think we're indicative of the evolution, just as you all are. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, farmers wouldn't have understood their central role in this challenge. Now it's ubiquitous. It doesn't matter where you go in the state, you know, particularly because we're seeing increased rainfall in Vermont as an impact of climate. Farmers have a PhD. I remember Brian in a meeting we had in Addison County talking about wetlands, and I hold on to your comments, Brian, very clearly about you're dealing with rain and having to you know, deal with that challenge that is front and center for all of you. So, you know, to me, it's very encouraging that has evolved. And I just want to point out, you know, Beth, you said, I assume you all know. I wouldn't assume we all know as much as maybe you think.
No.
We're scrapping
No.
and trying to figure it out just as much as everybody else, and trying to digest the best thinking that we've got around the state, and as somebody said, competing interests, and but propping up the rural and farm economy as a humongous, you know, really central part of the solution, particularly for Vermont, I think. So thank you for all your work. I just wanted to share that.
Yep. Are there other questions from any of the guests or committee members? Yes, Walt? You're muted, Walt.
There you
You
go.
weren't sounding too good muted.
Okay. No, I guess I apologize. I could only hear about half of what's going on here for whatever reason. You know, we talk about this technology, but I guess I caught enough of it that what resonates is communication, collaboration, and education. And like I say, it's like me trying to speak with some of my Mexican fellows. I can't get all of it, just a little bit of it. And I apologize for that, but that clearly resonates. Just these two, our organizations, and like you say, A&R and the Ag Department, the more we can all communicate together and work together, we can keep moving ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so true. John?
Well, I just wanted to pick up on one word that Senator Pearson said, wetlands. Wetlands are near and dear to our heart in Addison County. And, I know in my time with the agency, although I was not involved in it at all, that there is a very strong difference of opinion, I think that's putting it mildly, between the agency and A&R on the definition and the enforcement of the law on wetlands. At some point, we need to resolve that. And we need to understand, and I don't think it's necessarily needing to recognize a past situation of an agricultural exemption. It's recognizing what is actually happening. I mean, we know that NRCS keep telling us that we are increasing the amount of wetlands in this state, almost 400 or 500 acres a year, by incentivized programs that are getting farmers back to restoring wetlands. And yet, we don't seem to be able to get that point across to A&R. And the situation where you have, for example, a access road that is historical to a farm field that now goes through a wetland, and the farmer is not able to fix a culvert, which, yes, will have a minor impact on the wetland for a short period of time while that culvert, for example, is fixed. But, and I'm saying more than I should, or you probably want to go at this time, but at some point I would love, and I know our organization, we want to get this resolved, because it's a real headache, particularly when we're on these hydric soils in Addison County. Thank you.
Seems like we had quite a discussion in regards to that issue maybe a year or two ago. I don't know if Chris was on the committee then, but I'm sure Senator Collmore was. And we went around and around on that, and I guess we never did get to a resolution. But I know we've had that discussion back a while back. Brian Kemp?
As you say, we've been dealing with this now for a couple of years. I was actually on the wetlands working group that the legislative body asked the Ag Agency and A&R to put together. And, again, with COVID, all of those working groups, have kind of been put on the side. But, the frustrating part for us was we got called into that working group. We, meaning the farmer groups, got called into that at like the 11th hour. The decisions had been made to write the rules from A&R, and we had virtually no input. And there's, as we've discussed in this committee before, in the past, there's been a lot of friction between A&R and the Ag Agency over this issue. And I agree with you. It just hasn't, I don't think it's still been resolved. It's kind of been put on the back burner. But the project that John speaks about, just changing a culvert, hits me near and dear. We have the Lemon Fair runs through our pasture, and we have a culvert that needs replacing. And the issue is that they gave us a less than 5,000 square foot of impact, means you don't have to apply for a permit with A&R. But in a lot of these situations, it's going to take more than 5,000 feet of square foot to get the project done. So it's still very, very limiting. And we're talking about an access road to over a couple hundred acres of land in both pasture and crop ground. So that is something we still need to figure out and work on, I think. And I'm not sure if that's going to come back up this year or not, but certainly ask you folks for all your support on this matter as it moves forward.
Do you know, Brian, where does that sit at the present time? Because we haven't heard anything in regards to that this year. I don't even know about last season. Is that working group still working, or?
No, that working group hasn't worked now in probably over a year. I think the way my best recall is at the end of that working group when it kind of dissolved, and it even kind of dissolved before COVID. So I can't blame it on that, but A&R was still going to write some recommendations. And I don't know where things went from there, to be honest with you. I don't know if that report ever got finalized or not. I'm having a tough time remembering, but I think it's going to be an ongoing issue. You know, wetlands, it was always, as John said, there was an exemption for ag practices, making food, fiber, and ag products were exempt. And I think through former administrations, it was a mutual understanding. And then I don't know about the time that there was an administration change and different players, got into different positions. The mentality changed somewhere along the line there. And I don't think anything's been resolved, to be honest with you, that I know of.
Well, I don't want to give you any bad news, but it took us 2 years to fix the bathrooms at Addison County Field Days. So, wish us well, and we'll get to work on. But that was a total fiasco. The restrooms at your Field Days in that new building, and I think that finally got resolved this year, and you didn't even have a Field Days. So we'll look into that in regards to the wetlands issue. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up? If not, we certainly want to thank you for your time this morning. I think it's been a very productive discussion that we've had, and we'll be working on some of the points that you folks brought up, and must say, just keep up the good work. And if you have, in the future, if you have any issues that you want to bring to the committee, we'd be more than glad to hear from you anytime. Chris?
Well, just to say, Senator Parent has been listening. He texted me to say that his internet's a little flaky. Well, if you run into that, you may try turning your camera off. That might push it to the sound. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye now.
Yeah. So we've got a few things that we can look at and talk about with that they brought up this morning, but it sounds like those watershed groups are really getting tuned in to, making things a lot better. And I don't know, it probably isn't as fast as some things, but when you think about the whole thing, it took us hundreds of years to get to the point where we are. We aren't going to get them all resolved too quickly. So I don't know if there are any high points that you folks picked up on that where we should get a handle on, but I tried to keep a few notes and got some of the high points. And once we get Michael's supposed to be back with us this week, so that'll be a great help, and we can get rolling on that. Chris, did you have something, or?
I was just curious if you have a concept for bills that we aim to pass in the next, now we're into February, so.
Well,
yeah. I'm hoping it's the soil, chicken, compost, whatever. And, and I hope we will hear more specifically about what the ecosystem, needs are, because I think it's something we've supported in the past, but it's not clear to me what the ask is.
Well, the chicken bill, I think the composting bill, very important, and we need to get that one done. The food programs at the hot lunch, universal meals. I talked with Kay, is it Kay? Faye, this morning, and hopefully Jim, they're going to work with Jim and the draftsman on putting together the universal meals. There's 3 different things there that we've worked on in the past that will incorporate into one bill. And
you're talking about the incentive for local purchasing?
Yeah, that's in there, and something else. There's one more issue. So there'll be 3 issues that we've worked on to some degree in the past, and in bill form they'll be incorporated into one bill. And then the issue that we heard on Friday, I guess it was, from Alan Keeler, that I think that's a way to move forward into the future, is that type of deal. And they're going to be in, I think it's Friday, and hopefully Michael can be with us. And if you guys think as I'm thinking, we'll start moving toward a bill dealing with that issue. So, and then we've got these little sideline deals that we got to kind of keep up with and try to remember, that where we can help out, and like from our conversation this morning and from the conversations that we had last week with the Franklin County people, there's those fill-in things that we need to keep bringing along, but those other 3 main ones are I think the main issues that we want to certainly deal with. The issue, Brian.
Yeah, Bobby, I wasn't sure. I'm trying to remember back. I know the universal meal bill with the incentive to buy local. Was that going to come out of our committee or education?
Well, basically, we did the work on it, and education was hopefully getting behind us and supporting it and dealing with it as well.
All right.
Because Ruth was
Yeah.
on both committees.
Right. And we kind of ran out of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the big issue, I think, on any of these subjects is going to be the financial question.
Yeah.
if we have the money, don't have the money, is it starting a whole new program that's gonna cost money on an annual basis? We in appropriations, we're just taking testimony now from the different agencies, but haven't come to any conclusion on what kind of money we have. And I don't know if finance has talked about that yet or not, but we usually wait until we hear from finance on in regards to our financial status over across the hall. And then we kind of set the budget up to meet the revenues.
It's still an open question.
Yeah. Yeah, and it depends if the feds are going to send us a bunch of money and what strings are going to be hooked to it, and yeah, there's a lot hanging out there that depends on so many things. I know we've all heard the report from our economists that things are rolling along halfway decent, but it's next year when the Fed money stops coming that really the big question in everyone's minds. Are there other issues that we have questions in regards to, or you have questions? Anthony?
This is not a big, huge one, but people have been talking to me about the shelter bill we passed last year, the adequate shelter bill.
Oh,
If you've
the
been hearing about
animal shelter bill?
Yeah, the grass-fed folks who keep their animals outside would like to see tweaks made to that bill to make it easier for them to survive. They feel like it's putting too much on them to have certain kinds of shelter for animals that are outside.
I think Maddie, did Maddie send a note out on that?
Yeah, she did. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if I scheduled any time. I think that came over the weekend to me. But we have the animal care board, that crew coming in Wednesday.
Yep.
And maybe if you make a note, we could bring that up and decide, see where they stand on that.
Yep.
And but that that's something that's on the to-do list, and that's very customary that sometimes after you've implemented a law that you have to make tweaks and changes. Sure. Is that something, Anthony, that you'd want to look into?
I think so. Yep. Yep.
And now Michael's back, so we've got a draft person. If you could look into that, it might give us a head start on it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Bobby, do we understand the House to be sending over a miscellaneous bill of some kind?
Yes, and I haven't got a clue what's going to be in it yet, and I don't know if Carolyn, we've still got to sit down one of these days and have a discussion, because I want to bring her up to speed on what we're doing and thinking of doing, and vice versa. So that should be happening. I've Linda set something up.
Good. Well, it just gives us a little time in terms of adding a few things. If we do look at the shelter thing, it might be worth having some of the folks from Ag Extension, because after all, that's a place where the state is trying to promote grazers, and then if we made some mistakes in the shelter bill, the other hand is making it harder for them. So they may have a good perspective, but I do hope we can fix that if indeed it sounds like there is a problem. I've heard that too.
Yeah, and if we beef up the beef issue, there's going to be more of that as we move forward. So, and a lot of people are getting into the animal raising, not industry, but right at home.
I know you almost called it a business.
Yeah. Is there anything else that any of you'd like to bring up this morning?
No.
No. So I think we're rolling along. I don't think there's too many more groups on the list after this week that have requested time in front of the committee, and sometimes you wonder, if we ever going to get to work, or are we just going to listen to people? But it's customary to, these folks, when they call and like to be heard, it's the right thing to do. And sometimes you learn some very important points from hearing them. So, but I don't think too many more groups after this week to get in, or they have requested time before the committee. So I guess with that, we're going to be, we've got just a caucus at noontime.
Yep.
And then get ready for, I've got to be in committee at 1:00. I don't know about the rest of you, but yeah. Well, if there isn't anything else, we'll call it a morning.
My iPad keeps track of how many hours a day I'm online, and last week it was 7.5 hours a day. So Zoom meetings are really draining me. Draining all of us. Sure.
Almost every night there's some meetings, and gee whiz. Last night, I was back on for a while, and
we had a group of people ask us to come online with them at 7:30 one night. I was kind of like, could barely keep my eyes open. I was just staring at the screen all day and all afternoon. Then they have a schedule a meeting for 7:30 at night.